It didn't take long for the morning to arrive. As per usual, I was one of the first to wake. One by one, everyone else began to wake up as well, and still half asleep, waited for the water to boil, to have some rich morning coffee. Some are still wrapping up their dreams upstairs, and I, in the meantime, would like to give you a small tour of the cabin inside and out, to show you everything there is around here in more detail. The cabin is approximately 5 by 5 meters. Everything is arranged fairly neatly, but due to the large number of small items, the feeling of a mess lingered. The same can be said of the improvised medicine cabinet that was built into this cupboard. Here you can find most of the essentials, piled on top of each other. Next, a shelf with books for long winter evenings, a small table by the window, a few paintings depicting birds of prey. We already met them in the last episode. They delivered quite a bit of trouble. Under the kitchen, a big corner is allocated for all the spices, oils, dishes, and all other essentials for cooking. A bit lower, under a shabby cloth, there is a metal box with grains hidden in glass containers from the mice, not taking up too much space. A small, narrowing ladder leads up to the second floor. Around 5 people can comfortably fit here, but if need be, I believe it can accommodate up to 8. Linked to a gas tank. For a comfortable stay, a sink with a tabletop and a wood stove with an oven were installed downstairs. We did not light the latter, so I do not know if it still works. Based on the large windows, it is likely that the winters here are not extremely frosty, and it seems as though bears are also rare visitors. But thanks to them, the whole panorama around the house can be seen. Under the windows stands a large table on which a lot of stuff lies in some chaotic order. A few arrowheads, batteries, pieces of rock, one of which even has an embedding of gold, a capsule, a buckshot, an old radio, a notebook, and lots of other small things. The house lies near the very edge of the cliff, and in this way opens up the wonderful panorama of the mountains, which can be seen today in all their glory. At the bottom, a small brook runs by, and some ways above it, there is a waterfall. We will visit it a little later once everyone wakes up and has a cup of coffee. The homestead around the cabin isn't small. It was built on a large field cleared thoroughly of trees, and just off to the side stands a small shed. The old stove seemingly once served for cooking food inside the cabin, and due to needlessness is now used as a decent hard surface for other matters. As well, there is a heap of metal, chains, and various tanks that were once needed for the settlement and lodging. Inside, there are many different shelves and partitions for storing items that are mainly used outside. And right over here, there is already a window broken. It is possible that a bear tried to enter here since, during bad weather, hunters use this shed to butcher their prey, which leaves a scent, blood, and possibly pieces of skin, meat or bone. Behind the shed stands an old rusted-out Chevrolet pickup. One can easily drive here in the summer seasons. Now it is clear how all the tools were hauled here. However, we found an entry in the notebook which stated that initially, when he first began to set up this place, the owner of the cabin walked here on foot, even before the roads were paved and the deforestation of the woods commenced. For firewood, a specific place was set out under a canopy so that they wouldn't be dredged or flooded by rainfall. Someone apparently went to a lot of trouble to drive in a few large felled trees. Around lie a lot of empty 200-liter canisters which supposedly once stored gasoline, so that there would be an ample supply for any vehicles. Off to the side, there is even an enclosure. Interesting, who was held here? Farm animals for cultivation and later sustenance, or was the enclosure intended for wild animals that were captured for other reasons? Since the furnace in the cabin is always lit while we are inside, warmth seeps through every crevice. But the main path of heat loss is through the roof, from which decently large icicles are formed from the eaves and which add to the charm and ambience of the house. Big antlers, old rag snowshoes, lanterns, and a bunch of old things that look interesting on the facade and amaze the imagination of what primitive items people used before. Two main notes state that the house was built for 4 long years by the animal trapper Jim with his wife and dog over 50 years ago, when there were no roads here and all he used were hand tools. Now, there is a convenient driveway to this house and welcoming everyone. He asks that no one break the windows but keep the place clean and use anything you may need gratuitously. Thank you to Jim and everyone else who maintained order and cleanliness in the house. The place and the panorama really are unmatched. Having amply enjoyed the morning sunrise, which gave a view of all the mountains to the horizon, we set out to explore any interesting areas a walking distance from the cabin. The trail leads to the mountain waterfall and the only source of water from which one could easily replenish their supply. I bring a digital camera with me just in case, to capture any interesting scenes if an opportunity allows for it. In the winter, the waterfall is fully frozen, and only from its very depth can you hear a faint murmuring. Karen is standing on a solid cliff over the waterfall, and there is no danger of it collapsing. The cleft mesmerizes with its beauty while the clear water forms beautiful blue stalactites. They hang in a huge clump over the edge between the rocky formations and the mighty trees, creating an extraordinary landscape. The guys stand from above. I descended and headed off separately only 30 meters to the side. So imagine what breathtaking range there is here. Alexander and I brought my ice axe and microspikes for everyone. These are small spikes that go on boots to avoid slipping on hard snow and ice. We decide that tomorrow, he and I will find a comfortable and safe descent and try to get as close to the foot of the waterfall as possible to examine and regard it more thoroughly. Having planned out the day for tomorrow, our plans for today include pastimes just as interesting. The day rolls closer to noon, and we set out to explore our surroundings. We travel away from the cabin on forest roads between ridges and mountains, and having descended to the lowland to the wide creeks and rivers, a few hours into our journey we approached the nearest populated area which, for most of its history, was occupied with gold mining and other fossils. We are driving here. For a reason, Nikita, the 7th participant in this adventure, is going to be in the town waiting for us. He was unable to leave with us yesterday. Today, from the other side of the province, right after work early in the morning, Nikita set out toward the predetermined meeting spot, filming the whole journey on camera to share with us later on. He crossed the route almost effortlessly by car up to Bralorne in around 6 hours, where he also was greeted by unforgettable and mesmerizing landscapes on his way which, in a serpentine, descended then ascended to valleys and passes. Periodically driving on service roads, which required lowering the speed as logging trucks often use them, and if you drive at a high speed, you can easily encounter each other in a head-on collision. Usually, the drivers of the logging trucks recommend tuning into their radio frequencies if you are driving on these roads to warn them and keep them on guard. In this area, logging has long been one of the principal means of resource extraction and ways of living for the population, while sustenance is supplied through farming and hunting. Going along a straight, paved and wide road, which is well cleared and travels right through the settlement, we quickly approach our destination. All that is left is to make a few turns, cross a bridge over the river, and make it up a small slope to the next main road, leading through the very center of Bralorne. Mobile service only works in the town, so we agreed on a time and place beforehand, and having descended for a few hours, our team and Nikita arrived almost at the same time. Cheerfully greeting each other, firmly shaking hands and embracing everyone as if we hadn't seen each other in ages. We decide on our next route right next to the central pub and souvenir shop. The Bralorne settlement, which is situated 20 minutes from the Gold Bridge in the Bridge River Valley, was a mining town during the Great Depression, with the Bralorne and Pioneer Mine opening in 1932, and before its closure in 1971, over 113,000 kilograms of gold was produced. In fact, people began settling here in the 1870s, when they were searching for large veins of hard metal in the area. This was the richest gold mine in the history of Canada, which prompted the construction of the town, schools, churches, post offices, houses, recreation centers, and hunting cabins. The mine, abandoned for many years, was reopened in 2011 due to the rise of gold prices and began to generate it once again. For history lovers visiting Bralorne love to wander around ghost towns and abandoned mine shafts. In fact, one of these ghost towns, known as the third city in the area, which was last populated in the 1970s, was recently sold for a little over $1 million. This region is also appealing to those more inclined toward exploring nature, appreciate fishing, hunting, rock climbing, and the beauty of the rugged mountains of the valley. There are resorts on the shores of the neighboring lakes, and mountain biking is also a popular activity. Snowmobile rides on astounding glaciers entice those who love winter. Today, a small population lives in the small town of Bralorne, and as this is the highest altitude dwelling in the valley, it offers a wide range of summer hiking and mountain biking trails, and the old mountain trails serve as enjoyable, multi-use routes. The Bralorne Museum, church, community hall, abandoned mine shafts, and ghost towns. All of these offer history lovers an impressive view into the gold rush era. From the village of Bralorne, our journey leads us to an ascent of 1,480 meters to another cabin that was built by volunteers and ski lovers. There really are a lot of roads here, There is active deforestation and a bunch of logging equipment can be found all around. Thanks to them, it is much easier to drive here, which allows us to freely gaze at the valleys at different altitudes, which in turn opens up newer sights after each turn and ascent. We stop periodically to check the navigator so we don't miss the right path at each fork. At times, the road adapts a sharp, serpentine incline, but on tracks and thanks to the good weather and small amount of snow, we move up effortlessly. We arrive at a large mountain plain fully cleared of trees, on which stands an A-shaped house. In the fall of 1963, a ski club decided to move their activities from Bralorne above the community hall to a higher altitude with a more favorable view, and chose Sunshine Mountain. The ski club convinced the mineshaft management of the purposefulness of the project. The mineshaft lent them equipment for the work, including for the clearing of the old wood road and the slopes of tree stumps, and then for the construction of this cabin with an A-shaped frame. The volunteers working on the project were chosen by the president of the ski club, Murray Dunbar, with active members Art Williams and Harry Bromham. We circle the house, scouting out everything of interest to find out what and how everything is set up. Below the house you could fit a lot of equipment and other things if need be. The half-open basement, which is not fully sealed from all sides but securely protected from rain or snowfall, can easily fit anything. And if used wisely, it is totally possible to store an ATV, pile up a supply of firewood, and even stay there overnight when the weather outside is warmer. There are a few sleds here, which we immediately find a use for. Now begin the fun rides up and down the slope. that is how we spent most of our day. It's unfortunate, really, that no one brought their skis or snowboards. We could have gotten up to the very top and ridden down to the edge of the forest below the house and gotten back up quickly on the vehicles. As it turns out, we decide where we are going to go on the spot instead of planning our routes beforehand. According to old footprints, it is clear that the house receives visitors regularly, and people love to come here to ride around or simply relax. The view from here is in no way inferior to the panorama from the cabin in which we are staying. Mount Sloan, which stands on the horizon with its peak puncturing the clouds, leaves no one indifferent. Presumably, it was named in honor of David Sloan, who was a mountain engineer and managing director of the Pioneer Mineshaft east of Bralorne. The mountain is 2,720 meters tall, and we are currently at a height of 1,448 meters. According to the altimeters on our phones, we do not want to go back at all, feeling the temptation to drive down yet another forest trail, but our grumbling stomachs say otherwise, that it is time to return as during this active day. We all became reasonably hungry and, well, we all want to relax a bit and pull off all our winter gear. We head back in the same formation as when we arrived, with Karen leading, me sitting behind him, then Daniel with Igor, and bringing up the rear Alex with Alexander on the Yamaha. Going along the road we trampled out earlier, we descended the mountain without stopping by the same route we took up. The roads closer to the town are rolled out well and are almost completely free of snow. But the rubber tracks are not made for such a surface, so we carefully drive along the edges of the road, without haste, from the other side of the town and arrive at Lorne Avenue. Here, there is a charming and cozy pub with friendly personnel, where we choose to stop to grab something to eat and rest for a bit, as the road back to the cabin is still a long one. that meal and a glass of beer, no one feels like driving anywhere. But what can you do? We need to go back. We decided to try to drive Nikita's car as close to the house as possible and hoped that it would be able to drive all the way up, especially since there is still enough daylight and time that would allow us to winch it out if it gets stuck along the way. Of course, along the lowland, where the roads are straight and cleared, Nikita drove up without a problem. But once the road adopted an incline up the mountain, the car slowly began to sink into the snow and needed a higher speed than ours to drive up each turn on the serpentine. The guys drove up a little further, where the road was wider and they could drive off to the side to allow Nikita the space to accelerate up this distance. I wait for him, in case he needed to call the guys for help. A vehicle on wheels comes in second to tracks, regardless of how winterized the tires are or how high terrain the vehicle is. It is rattled from side to side and thrown off the tracks quite badly. There is no point in driving further, so accompanied by the guys, they decide to leave the car by the foot of the mountain. I waited for the guys back here for more than half an hour, listening to the silence of the woods, among which an owl could be heard from afar, a raven, occasionally flying by and interrupting the silence, and the wind which swayed the peaks of the trees. The sunny weather withdrew to allow for the thickening clouds to peek through from behind the mountain and descend upon the earth. Without waiting for the guys any longer, I headed up the road to the cabin alone. There was about half a kilometer to go. Meanwhile, as Nikita was descending in reverse, the guys supported him with the winches, and at one spot, if it wasn't for that, Nikita could have plunged down a cliff, and then everything would have ended far worse. But everything turned out great, and they descended just fine, catching up to me right before the cabin. Finally, we are all back at the base. We got back just in time before twilight descended on us completely. Our day of hard work is not over yet. Having rested just a bit after our return, we decide to gather fallen timber around the house for the evening, as there are 7 of us, to avoid burning through all the thicker firewood from the shed. We drag the thinner ones by hand, but as for the thicker pieces, having cut them down as needed, we load into the Yamaha. We could have also dragged these pieces by hand as the campfire was only 20 meters away, but why hurt our backs when we have these machines? Having prepared a supply of firewood for the rest of the evening, the guys settled down by the fire, remembering and recalling the highlights of the day. I decided to breathe for a bit and found a very quiet spot nearby. This is an old, yet still comfortable bench under the crown of the tree, from which you could gaze at the cliffs and nearby peaks, immerse yourself in your thoughts and be present with yourself, watching as the gray veil covers more and more of the mountain peaks, hiding the horizon, inching closer to us and carrying with it a chilly wind, as a consequence of which the peaks of the trees whistle more intensely and the snow approaches stubbornly from the valley. The evening has already fully descended on us. The big campfire, bright and crackling, illuminates the whole field, and everyone does their own thing, according to the mood they're in. As per usual, Nikita is behind the barbecue. He is cooking his signature steaks, teasing us all with the unrivaled smell that circulates through the whole area. Dinner was served right by the campfire under the open skies. Having set the food out on a bench, we settled around on tree stumps and chairs which we took out of the cabin. We eat until we're full and continue to relax late into the night by the fire, which throws out its bright and playful sparks, circulating above with the white, melting snowflakes. Giving all they've got, they try to fall and settle on the ground, unmelted, in a frenzied dance with the fire, which will remain stubborn until it dies out and gives way to the morning. Karen was having a hard time falling asleep, so my camera filmed him until sunrise.